buyers, when the rates were at three, we had so many like syndicators and new buyers jump in, and those guys and girls with not as much experience, their investors are more concerned. So they can't syndicate money. Money's more expensive. So we saw a whole part of the market of like the newer syndicating investors disappear.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why? Hi, everyone. I'm Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today, I'm here with Justin Ferguson. Justin is a dynamic leader in the commercial real estate industry and a passionate advocate for breaking barriers as a minority professional in a traditionally non-diverse field. With nearly 2 decades of experience, Justin has built a reputation as one of the top transactional brokers in Southern Virginia. Justin, like I said, I think it's going to be much more interesting to let you tell your story in your words. So I'll
Yeah.
stop there on the bio. I do want to say thank you for coming on the show today. Thanks for taking time out this morning. I'm definitely excited to chat. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, well, it's glad to be here. Hoping you and all your listeners find value in my story. I've been in real estate and professionally for a long time in many sectors, and if people think that's cool and valuable and helps them out in their career, I'm all for it.
Yeah, awesome. Well, tell us about your story. Tell us a bit of your background. I know you've been in the business for a little while, but
Yep.
let's hear a little bit about how you got started in the journey.
Yeah, so I started after school. I went to school at Penn State here in Pennsylvania for architecture. So I had this big dreams of being, the next Frank Lloyd Wright. Like I wanted to design and be that guy. But as you go through school, you realize that if you're not like the top 0.1% of designers, which most aren't, right? That's not the path for everyone. And I was going through school. I was so far in that I just continued with it. And I had a teacher who flipped houses, but it's a weird thing. Like I'm supposed to design all these big fancy buildings, right? Lack of knowledge of the career. And he's like, yeah, I flip, what kind of luxury homes? Use my design. I don't pay architects. I GC everything. And I was like, interesting. So that kind of put the real estate bug in my head in undergraduate. And then after school, in 2010, the market was recovering from craziness. And I jumped into mortgages. I was a loan originator. So I was this young guy calling families like, hey, you should refinance, right? Things. And no one wanted to listen to me, but I learned a lot about cold calling and, discipline. And it's like, they don't, it's not personal, right? And it's time at the time I didn't realize the severity of it, but it was not personal, but people were afraid, kind of like people, are here in 2025. So I went from that to Keller Williams for a brief time, selling homes. Again, it was way too much emotion for me. It was great, touring someone a bunch of houses and then like, does this house meet your needs? Yeah, this looks great, but I don't like this one little thing about it. And it's like, oh, I'm gonna move on. So, after that, I went to wholesaling, right? Most people do a dabble in wholesaling. And then after that was property management. I moved to the South and was in property management for a few years, started in maintenance and then just really worked my way up and did leasing, like check every box in a small company. I then moved to Virginia and now I've been here for 10 years. And now I do exclusively brokerage, multifamily. If it involves multifamily, so like mixed use development or just brick and mortar, right? Or that's kind of what I've been doing. So I've been professionally in real estate many different ways for a long time.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting that you say that, and I find that to be true of many of my guests and myself included. Like I think that the cool thing and sometimes confusing thing about real estate is there's so many different ways that you can get into it, that you can make money, that you can be successful. And so a lot of times it's people get in that kind of shiny object syndrome space where they're like, oh, I want to try this. I want to try this. I want to try this. And I think sometimes just deciding where your niche is and what you want to particularly focus on is
Yeah.
part of the battle. So, um, Yeah, it's fascinating. I've talked a lot about mentorship on this podcast, and it sounds like you were lucky enough to kind of come across someone in undergrad that I don't know how much beyond those conversations that professor acted as a mentor, but I think even just the introduction of the idea, the kind of concept that hey, I'm
Yeah.
doing this thing. It may not even be my main thing, but I'm doing this thing because it makes sense for me to be involved in real estate. Did you have, was there more than that conversation? Did that professor act as a mentor to you, or just kind of plant the seed of the ideas?
Yeah, I mean, at that time it was more of a plan to see. I was too young and too worried about other things that in undergrad to focus on like what happens when I leave here, right? What are some like real estate, right? So I think hindsight is 2020. I wish I would have gone deeper, and not that it wasn't. You always have those teachers or professors of like, hey, you should focus on this, but when you're 18, 19 years old, right, you're more worried about Saturday football than building a real estate career. So I think there was times when I was definitely looking. At real estate, but really hadn't focused it. My family's not in real estate. No one in my entire family does real estate. So it wasn't even something that I even thought about at the time. It was go to school, get a good job, become an architect, right? That was the vision. And then like, as you get through school, like, I don't know if this is necessarily for me. And that's when you start opening up the mindset. And when you're open to looking for other people and other opportunities, that's kind of like mentors kind of find them, right? There's people that want to come out and say, hey, I think I see potential in you and want to help. So after school, I really found a lot of people who just saw some potential in me and was like, hey, I want to at least help nudge you in the right direction. And I believe in mentoring and coaching, like for, at all times. I believe if you have the resources to do it, you should be coaching. You should get a coach, right? Let someone else who's done it before you um, teach you how to go there farther and faster. And I think a lot of people want to do things on their own and be self-made and like go for it, right? You can still be great if you have some help, right? And a nudge. I'd rather just be efficient the first time. And I'm really big into that. And just I'm at that point in my career where I'm trying to help our junior agents and other people figure it out themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I see a lot of, sort of willingness and even excitement about giving back and mentoring and being, someone, just a resource for people coming into the industry, whether that's, flipping houses on
Yeah.
brokerage side, whatever it is, somewhere in the real estate, finding some level of mentorship. And I think, it comes in all different forms. It can be, as you said, a professor that kind of plants the seed. And when you're ready to realize that was probably a good idea, come back around to it. It can be, someone you work for. I'm a big fan of sort of that apprenticeship model.
Yeah.
Or it can be a paid mentorship. And I think it doesn't necessarily matter which one it is. I think it just matters that you kind of recognize what position you are and what you have to give, right? If you are maybe already a professional in another space and you want to get into real estate, you might go the paid mentor route because
Hmm.
you have some money but don't have the time to kind of be someone's intern or whatever. But
Yeah.
if you're a 20-year-old kid coming out of college, or thinking about what am I going to do with these next steps, maybe you just go work for someone, and that education is your pay. So there's a lot of ways to do it, and I think important for people to recognize that.
Absolutely.
you 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 tried a couple of different things in the real estate space. I mean, what ultimately brought you around to getting into brokerage and specifically, I mean, multifamily, because that's its own niche within a niche.
Yeah. I was living in Alabama at the time, and I remember I was in property management. So I knew that I wanted to be in real estate, and property management is just, a management company is just as pivotal as buying and selling, right? You need a team that can actually execute the vision. And I was talking with owners who had owned, and I saw a broker. We drove around town. I never forget it. We were driving around. He's like, I sold that building. I sold that building. I know that guy. Like, it was looking back, it was like a cool kind of flex of like, hey, I've done a lot of cool things, right? I'm like, so that kind of put it into my kind of, hey, like, if he can do it, I can do it, right? I think that's kind of really what sparked it. And then being in property management already, I'm like, I already understand a good amount of this side of the business. So what does sales potentially look like? What could full-time commission brokerage sales look like? And then I moved to Virginia and I said, this is the time to do it. So I just jumped in. I didn't know anyone in the state outside of my now wife. I didn't know not one person, or at least in Southern Virginia. We have some family in Northern Virginia, but ownership, records, databasing, like started from scratch. And I picked multifamily because I had come from property management. So I felt I know enough about this already. And let me use what I know about managing and facilitating and improving returns and rents and all that great, strategies, and just help people on the other part of buying and selling as well. So it was a kind of straightforward transition for me.
Yeah, I'm sure the property management piece was a really good introduction to that. I think, as you said, I mean, yeah, people talk a lot about buying right when it comes to real estate, but I think managing it right, whatever asset class we're talking about, multifamily, office, store, self store, it doesn't matter. Like the management is key because it's not the same as a flip. Like when you
Yeah.
still have to manage a flip correctly if you want to be profitable, but I mean, you're ultimately generally holding these assets for years rather than months, and so I think that's truly an important piece of it.
Well, like with buyers now, and we saw the big wave of like people flip apartments too. The holding time is just a little bit longer than a home, for example. But I always say, like, how did you arrive at these numbers, right? You're going to take a rent from 500 and then get 800. Like, what is your plan of doing that? So like the buyer always has their own ideas. I'm like, okay, cool. Do you have a contractor who can do this in the time? Yes. And then my favorite question is, well, who's going to manage this process for you? Like, does your property management think they can get 800 for your rent? And that was, a lot of people don't think about that. And I think my background in all these other sectors is like, great. If you, the buyer, think you can get 800 or whatever your pro forma number is, does the bank believe in it? But if the property manager does not believe in that, then you'll never get that rent. Then you're like fighting your manager saying, I saw online, I saw apartments.com that the next guy's getting this, right? And if they do the trenches and they're in there, they're the one talking with potential renters, right? They're the one doing it every day. If they don't think they can get it, you won't get it. And then you're scratching your head and say, well, why didn't I complete it? So like part of my conversation with buyers these days is like, let me understand your thought process and your team. And do they believe in these numbers as well? Because, it's a whole team that actually gets these deals done and to the pro forma numbers.
Yeah, no, it's a great point. I think um, sort of brings up definitely one thing I want to talk about is the last few years. We had quite a boom between mid maybe mid to end 2020 through middle of 2022, and then the market changed a lot when rates
Mm.
changed. And so talk a little bit about and based on kind of what you just said, to like understanding what you're buying, what the plan is. It very much is, each asset is really a business, and you need to have a business plan
Yeah.
and a way to execute that business plan. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the differences you've seen between pre 2022 and now, and we'll also get you to get out your crystal ball about what you see in the future. But
Yeah.
start with kind of comparing those time frames.
Yeah. I mean, so essentially from, let's say I jumped in multifamily in like 2015 was when I started, about 10 years. So 2015, we were on a slow and steady increase with the economy, and everything was on the ramp up, slow and steady. Um, and then COVID happened, and I was fortunate to be in multifamily because we knew, and I mean, investors and brokers and owners knew that once COVID happened and the stimulus checks came out, there became this combination of like ethical ownership versus greed, right? And what happened was some owners were like, this is a pandemic. We should just keep rents low, keep people in their homes. And some owners said, you have an extra $600 every month, right? You have an extra $1,200. So during COVID, when interest rates were at 3%, it was a buying frenzy. People were buying, and we saw a lot of disturbing and exciting things where people at that time, when you would buy an apartment, let's say it's 10 units, you would start with the vacants first, right? If it's vacant, that you need work to upgrade it, do that one first, right? That unit is not producing you income, get it ready and rented. And then if you want to update the rest of the apartments, that's when you're going to go through the other tenants and say, hey, we have some new inventory at the building coming online. Um, we'd love to help you move over and find you some better living if you can afford an increased rent. And then you renovate that unit. And you just cycle. So it's a slow and steady process. And then when rates were at 3% and rent was going to 20% at the height in Richmond, rent, it was like 15 and 20% jump in Richmond. Owners said, well, some owners were just displacing everyone. They said, rather than me slow and steady, right, and have to buy materials and wait for the tenant to move out or not move out, or potential, the eviction moratorium where and in Richmond was very tenant friendly as it should have been, where no one could be evicted. Owner said, I need to move everybody out of this apartment and renovate. So the buying mindset was, yeah, I can get that higher rent. Let me remove everyone day one and do it. And now that was a big cause of concern. And here we are the last few years where rates tripled. A lot of people don't need to sell, right? They bought right. Most of them have done their renovation plans. So they're getting these higher rents. They have a better property. So we've seen transactions drop because if you bought at a 3, you don't want to sell and get a 7, right? Or if you buy what homes, right? Single family homes as well, right? And buyers, when the rates were at 3, we had so many like syndicators and new buyers jump in, and those guys and girls with not as much experience, their investors are more concerned, so they can't syndicate money. Money's more expensive, so we saw a whole part of the market of like the newer syndicating investors disappear. And I call it the air quotes, the old guys who've been doing this for 30 years are like, I'll just wait. I've been through this before. I'm just going to wait for it to go down. And all the unserious buyers will disappear. Then we'll get real deals done. And that's kind of where we're at now. A lot of people have weaned their way out. The market's weaned their way out. And it's been an interesting road the last, decade for me since I've been in it. And to your other question is, where do we see this going? It's hard to say. I think, with 4 years ago, 3 years ago, we wouldn't talk politics and real estate. Like, it was clearly separate, but now it's worth being mindful of what administrations are doing for certain people, and we're having those kind of conversations and crystal balls. And there's always a caveat of nothing has been signed yet. It's not implemented. It's all like talks, and we're just bringing that administration conversation slightly into our chats with owners more. Like, we just need to at least put this in your brain. Nothing's happened yet, but we should be mindful about what could happen and how we can potential there. So I think 2025 is still up in the air. We're leaning that commercial real estate might be fine. I think we're also leaning that single family homes might still be a struggle for a lot of people. So that's kind of our surface level thoughts at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to know. It's one thing one thing I learned over the last few years is I, I'm not even sure I believe that the experts know what they're talking about. Like I'm just like I think anybody's guess is as good. I remember being in this was in probably it's probably 2021, early 2021, being at a large real estate conference, and there was a whole panel talking about how interest rates were going to go to zero, that we were going to be just like Japan, and like that was happening. That's
Yeah.
where we were going. Don't worry, interest rates are just going to keep going down. It's going to be amazing. And then like I have since heard those same people talk about like just like they never said what they said then, and
Yeah.
it's fine. Like I understand that people don't know, and I understand that kind of making the best judgment that you can on the current information. But I also think that like we have no control over it, so it's more about just trying to be I think control what you can control,
Yeah.
and be cautious with the rest of it. I think you're right. We just don't know what's going to happen here over the next few years. Anyway.
That's really big. Like what's happening at your apartment building and your portfolio that you have control over, right? And I think that's the important thing. There's a lot of investors that we work with. You make money when you buy the deal. That's how a lot of people are considered. Like it's not about the pro forma, the after, because you don't know what's happening in the future. You can't plan for it traditionally, and a lot of guys I work with are like, did I buy it right? That's what's important. If I bought it in its current state and it's great, I could make a lot of money in the next few years, but I could also not. The pro forma could never happen, and that's where people get lost. Is like we want upside. Everyone wants to make money on the back end, but how do you make money when you buy it and not overreach your discipline of like buying good real estate?
Yeah, yeah, it's truly getting back to fundamentals and the operating. I mean, management and operating. You talked about having the right management place and team. You when when rates or lease rates were going up 20% annually, then you didn't have to be a good operator. You didn't have to
Yeah,
kind of figure things out. But now you do, and it's twice as much work as it was 3-4 years ago. All of it is twice as much work as it was 3-4 years ago, and
yes, sir.
that's probably why there's less people doing it now. It's harder, but yeah, it's what we've got it, and I'm sure you probably see the same thing on the brokerage side. It was like, you know, transactions were happening so quickly, and people were selling the same multifamily complex, every year and a half. It wasn't going 5-7 years. It was happening much faster. So um, I think it's all just it's very fascinating. I think you just have to take what you have and learn from it, and sort of apply that going forward. I think ultimately it's just
Yeah.
making making smart decisions after you've experienced particular things. Tell me a little bit about the Richmond market. I actually have I know where Richmond is. I have friends that live there, but I don't actually know much about what the market's like, what you're seeing for growth, that sort of thing. Maybe give a little pitch for Richmond, and maybe you can get
Yeah.
some business there.
Yeah, well, so Richmond right now is on a really solid trajectory. I mean, really, so COVID, a lot of people during COVID came to Richmond because Richmond's, you're 2 hours from Virginia Beach and the boardwalk, right? You go an hour and a half, 2 hours west, you're in Charlottesville, which is wine country. And then you go south, you're like 2.5 hours, 3 hours from Raleigh, Durham, Charlotte. And then you go north, obviously 2 hours, you're in DC. So like it connects this cool, pathway to get to most places, depending on what you want to do. Weekend getaways and work and everything else. And with COVID, a lot of people brought their income from other regions to Richmond. And Richmond's a big food town, a good hospitality town. And we've seen a major influx of Class A development since COVID, right? People were banking on the fact that the 6-figure work from home young couple, right, who's going to move to town, they don't want to buy a house because they don't know Richmond, right? But they're going to rent at this Class A apartment for 2 to 3 years. And that's what we want to work. That's what we're trying to find. So Richmond's vacancy rates are about 8%, which is higher than the national average for Class A, because we've had nothing but Class A developments in the last few years. I mean, there's 4,700 units coming this year. We've had like 6,000 last year. There's just a constant demand for real estate. And on top of that, we have CoStar. CoStar is I know the nation's not the number one data company for commercial real estate. So they have all the data. They're making a new headquarters. Their national headquarters are here. They own homes.com. They own apartments.com. Like they are that sector of data. And if they're saying, listen, we want to move our national headquarters to Richmond and then do another $1 billion expansion, we want to be there. And so now we have Lego who's here. Now we've got Sanmar. We've got, in Virginia as a whole, Amazon made the most land purchases in the last year for data centers. So there's a lot of trends that are coming to Virginia, and pairing with the fact that we've got transportation and the ocean's not too far away. So yeah, I mean, I think Richmond's a good place for metrics and consistency. Class A, a lot of good value add people, and I call the investor roadmap, right? We do a lot of deals from people from California, exchanges, right? 1031, cap rates on your part of town are much different than ours. So they want to buy in Charlotte or Northern Virginia or DC. Those are very expensive areas. And if they're in DC, they're going south down 95 to Richmond. They're like, I don't know about Richmond. It seems cool, but let me go east or south. And they get priced out of those markets. And they end up coming back to Richmond. So, I think anyone listening that's an investor, just be open to Richmond and the Hampton Roads were my two markets. But it's extremely strong because we're in a good location and on a major interstate as well.
Yeah, it definitely is a good location. It's I mean, you pointed it all out, but the proximity to everything around it, and but then being more affordable. I think it's like I said, I have some friends that live there. They love it. I
Yeah.
think it's a great spot. I think it's a very well or very family oriented. I also there's a lot of horse country out there, right? Is that
Yeah, man, you're within, I think, 2.5 hours, let's say three, from hiking, skiing, wine country, the ocean, log cabins. Like it's a good radius to whatever you want to do. So, we're seeing some the other incomes from the work from home crowd kind of push and inflation and other cost of living higher up here as most people, most places. So that's changing a few like dynamics locally, but a lot of people are coming here because they like the freedom of being able to say, wake up Saturday morning and say, what do you want to do today? Like we can drive and do day trips to a lot of places and a lot of cool things,
yeah,
which
yeah,
is
that's
great.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, Justin, let me. I want to switch gears. I want to ask you the questions that I like to ask each guest.
Yeah.
The first one is based on the name of the show being "Know Your Why." So what is your why? What's driving you? You've been in the industry for a while. You're successful. What kind of keeps you going? Keeps you motivated and excited?
Yeah. It's always been, I say freedom, right? Freedom is the why. And then it's the consistent why, and the why is, as most people, has changed. So like it was freedom of waking up and doing what I want to do, right? I wanted to be an architect when I was in school because they got to go places and see stuff and design cool like landmarks and pieces of history that were always going to be there for a long time. And then after school, I remember doing like a Keller Williams coaching program when I first started at KW, was live a life by design. I was like, that like really stuck with me of what do I want to do? What's my vision for the end goal? Like what's the end game here? And how do I work backwards to achieve that? So that's the why, is freedom. And now I have, a wife and two small children, and it's like freedom for the family, right? I want to wake up and do what I want to do. I want them to wake up and have fun and have the ability to live and not worry about what's happening in the outside world unless we want them to. So it's a lot of it's freedom and just living a good life. And now I'm at the point where like my parents are getting older, and we took them to London and Ireland last year. It was like, that felt good, right? It's like, thanks, Dad, for giving me money for pizza and beer in college. All those it's like, let me give back. They're like one of those like warming feelings, is good to do something with your parents. So it's like I want my parents to experience freedom, to travel. So like I think my why has always been is freedom.
Yeah, it's awesome, awesome. Yeah, no, giving back to the parents, for the sacrifices they made is certainly it's funny. We we talk a lot of. I think we kind of life has its cycles, right? Like we get taken care of, and then a lot of times I feel like we move on to our own families and sort of taking care of them, um, and then come back around to like, hey, I gotta give back to mom and dad. Got to make
Yeah.
make good on what they did for me and all of that. So I think that's
It's like, thanks for co-signing on my loan 20 years ago, Dad. Like, thanks for investing in me and doing it. So, whenever I can, I like to give back to my parents as much as possible.
That's great. Tell us something about yourself that isn't common knowledge, special skill, a hobby, just anything that you're comfortable sharing to let the listeners know you a little better.
Yeah, common knowledge is not common knowledge. I used to be, pretty high up chess player, and when I was younger, I loved chess. I was undefeated through high school. I feel like I'm 35, so high school days are far away at this point, but really big into chess. Yeah, I like strategy games. I'm a gamer. This is my cool gaming chair, ergonomically perfect for when I'm sitting in front of this computer for too long. I like tabletop games, like Warhammer 40K is like high on the nerd, but I think again, freedom is I want to do what I want to do. So like if I want to play, air quotes nerd game, I'm going to do it because that's what makes me feel good. And in COVID, I jumped deep into wine. I mean, I am a WSET 3 sommelier, so like I am a wine guy as well. So, when people look at my social media, like you were doing what today? Like I like to wake up and do, and I've always been like that. And like, how do I live this life that I want to live? So like, I'll be playing chess. Like my wife was, she's like, you want to go play chess in the park? Like, yeah, like that's just a cool thing to do. Like, you don't understand it, but we went to London. I'm like, you know what? I want to go to Savile Row, which is the King's Man. Like, I like suits. She's like, you want to go look at suits? Like, yes, I do. Like, so I just kind of I like what I like, and I'm not, not ashamed by it whatsoever.
Yeah, that's the whole point. Like I said, it's freedom. It's being able to kind of do what you want when you want with who you want. Like that's the ultimate goal, and yeah, makes a lot of sense. I I would I actually enjoy chess. I don't think I'm good at it, but I think it's a very cool strategy game. I've never played enough, and I would definitely never go sit down in a park and play because I know that I would get laughed out of there. But no, it's very, very cool.
Well, COVID, for example, like chess, COVID boomed during COVID. Like people were playing chess. It was like Twitch streamers. Like chess hit a really high peak during COVID, and people are like, "Well, I have nothing else to do. I'm intimidated by chess," and then like people are playing it now. So like, go to that park, sit there. There's probably someone your skill level 100% because people want to play it and they're willing to teach you as well. So I believe in you.
That would be cool if they were, people are just interested in having novices come down and learn. That'd be cool. When people hear this and they want to reach out to you, what's the best way?
The best way is LinkedIn. I'm very big on LinkedIn. Just Justin Ferguson on LinkedIn. My website is www.justin-ferguson.com. That's got me and kind of encompasses my ecosystem of wine Justin, real estate Justin, LinkedIn Justin. So gaming Justin, right? I kind of just put a lot of stuff there, and those are my two ways. We can share like my Instagram and everything else as well. But I try with real estate marketing is my business, right? And those are my big ways. If you LinkedIn, you'll find more of me there.
Okay. All right. Perfect. Yeah. And we'll get that in the show notes for people to find
Yeah.
you. So, Justin, this was great. I really appreciate you taking the time out today. Sorry about my voice today. We were talking about it before we started recording, but we're recording in the midst of the LA fires. So I think I've have some maybe some smoke in the air here.
Yeah,
But
just a little bit.
yeah, I appreciate you today. I appreciate having you on. I think really a lot of interesting stuff about your journey and certainly a good pitch for Richmond. People who are looking for perhaps a new market or maybe even a place to live. So thank you for being on and taking the time out. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Jason, thank you. This has been great. Hope all listeners find value in this today. And, I'm interested to hear how your podcast voice changes in the next few weeks. So you get some purified air filters.
Yeah, I know we gotta get the air cleared out here. It looks a little better outside. Less Armageddon-y today. So hopefully we'll get through this without too much more damage. But yeah, thanks again. And folks listening, make sure you connect with Justin. We'll have his information in the show notes. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can get more great guests. And thank you all for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?